Welcome to the No Filter, No Apologies podcast with Rebecca Sachs and Katy Shapiro.
Welcome back to another episode of No Filter, No Apologies podcast. Today, we're getting a head start on Women's History Month. So Women's History Month actually kicks off next week, but Rebecca and I thought it was really important to start the conversation now because sometimes, March becomes focused on the celebration of women in the past. And that's really important, but we also want to value women that are making an impact today and encourage you to spend March thinking about how you can be inspired by some of the women that we celebrate in March and how you can find some resources of other women to inspire you continuously, and then how you too can become a woman of impact. So that's what we're hoping to go through today. So speaking of that, I thought we would kick off with the women who impacted us early in our lives and talk about why they were so impactful. So Rebecca, who were your early influences?
My mom.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like I said before, I always thought I'd be a teacher and kind of follow in her footsteps with that. But I didn't. We didn't go that direction. But yeah, I'd say my mom mostly.
Yeah. I'm sharing that with you, and I think a lot of women would probably feel that with us. I would have to put my mom and my sister in the same bucket, but I'm going to tell you why. I am loud and blunt and a lot of times filter free, and my sister and my mom have this quiet strength, confidence, and ability to really hold their own, but with tact, which is something that I often lack. And I constantly have them in my peripheral because I always admired their ability to never give up ground ever. Right. These are two very strong women, but do it in a way that just had this quiet confidence and commanding of space. And so whenever I feel like that filter-free piece is maybe going a little too far, or an environment calls for a more tactful approach, I constantly think of them and I'll be like, how would they handle this? Because they have encouraged me to, even though it's counterintuitive for me, just to really think differently and know that there are different ways to do things and model their examples. So I agree.
Yeah. My mom was always very patient, complete opposite of my dad. And so mom was always the one that she was the constant too. And so, and she was the one who would say, you could do it or be anything you want. So I think that's why. And then just seeing how different she was from her parents.
So making sure that she was breaking cycles or,
Yeah, it felt that way. And she always wanted to be close and know what was happening and always had conversations. Nothing was off limits to talk about.
That's really good. That's really important, I think, too, in a mother-daughter relationship. A non-familial early influence for me that you might laugh at was Lucille Ball. I loved Lucille Ball, but beyond the slapstick comedy that she did, I read like biographies, autobiographies about her. She was a model when she was younger. But I think the inspiration of a woman who could not take herself so seriously that she wasn't afraid to look, and I'm doing air quotes, ugly on TV or be silly or just do the crazy things she did. But then behind the scenes, she was a very successful businesswoman. She advocated for herself. She advocated for young women. She was a good mom. And it was all the things that I aspired to be. This, I'm clumsy and sometimes I say dumb things. And I just loved having someone that reminded me of me, but was doing it louder and funnier and successful at that time. I was young. I hadn't grown into that yet. So I think Lucille Ball for me was another one that isn't in my family, but definitely influenced what I thought life as a woman could be when I got older.
No, well, I know you've always said that you love her, but I didn't know that much in depth that you did, right? And it's funny because I feel like growing up, a lot of the women that I was inspired by or aspired to be like, they were more characters in shows or books. And so like I had Samantha, my American Girl doll. And eventually they came out with books. They didn't have books right away. And so I was adamant about getting those books, but I loved everything from the Victorian time period because of that.
I love that.
I still have I have my Samantha in my house right now.
All of you American Girl collectors connect with Rebecca.
And then I read a lot of historical fiction growing up, just because I wanted to know more about certain time periods without having to read a history book.
Right.
And so it was more so when I was like 15, 16, but I read a book about a girl who lived in Salem during the Salem witch trials. And so learned about, they had all the real people that were in the Salem witch trials. And so I was like, all right, we got to go to Salem. So we went to Salem, and and then I had a panic attack in Nathaniel Hawthorne's house in one of the back staircases that the slaves took and for the Underground Railroad, and it was awful. But
wow. Well, speaking of Salem witch trials, I don't believe that they burned witches. I think they just burned opinionated, smart
women who had too much land or too much money because their husbands were gone and they wanted to take over their property.
That is true. Yeah. And also I've done a lot of reading that they would burn healers. So women who had found natural remedies for illnesses and things like that, they would consider them a witch, and they would burn them, which was wild. So imagine how many women created different things, inventions. And I just read a story, I think it was Jack Black's mom was in labor, and then while she was in labor solved a mathematical equation that saved 3 astronauts that were out, and then went and delivered her baby. And so the next time someone tells you that women are too emotional, or how are we going to run a country when we're on our period, just share a story like that, because that's the kind of stuff we do all the time. And I'm sick and tired of hearing that women are too emotional. But that was a whole side quest. But these are some women, these are just mini moments, right? That you can look back and look at women and say, I didn't know anybody who was burned at the stake, obviously. And a lot of them weren't captured in history by name, but I can be inspired by the fact that these weren't real witches. It was just strong women. And that's how society decided to punish them.
And there was the one, her name was Rebecca Nurse. So I was drawn to that. Even though she was a very elderly woman, and they killed her by putting stones on her.
But back to mentors and people who lift us up as you go into Women's History Month. First, let's hope that you're inspired by those stories, because I think it does remind us that there are a lot of women who went before us. And when we're going into March, whether it's someone who was burned inappropriately or stoned, or a woman who was giving birth and still managed to save 3 lives, these things are happening every day that don't get captured too. And be that kind of woman when you go into March, and remember that those are the kind of people in our generation that are out there as well. And we can aspire to be just like them. And
absolutely.
I think lately though, as I've gotten older, I've gotten into a lot of audio books or different podcasts that we listen to, and leaders. And before we jump into that, can you think of someone who in your professional journey was a woman who sort of inspired you or impacted your leadership style or led by example?
Yeah. So I want to say it was 2020. I feel like it was 2020, because there was a book that I read twice. I read it in 2020, Dare to Lead, and then I read it again recently this past winter. And so it had very different impact on me at the 2 different times with what I was dealing in my professional life. Before, it made me realize I'm not crazy. It's just everybody else is crazy in a sense. And there was a lot of truth into what was spoken about. And then now in reading it, again, recognizing I'm not crazy, but in a different way. And I think while it's a great book, and I've listened to Brene Brown's podcast too.
Is it a Brene Brown book? What's the name
of the book? Brene Brown. It's Dare to Lead. Sorry,
Dare to Lead
by Brene Brown. Yeah.
So Dare to Lead by Brene Brown.
It's good. And what I realized though in reading it the second time is that you really do have to have 100% commitment from the people around you to make it be effective and work and do the bravery that she puts into the book. Because if it's just one-sided, it's not going to work.
Right.
You have to have kind of an all-in leadership team. And so in both instances, that was not the case. And so it wouldn't have been realistic for the environments that I was in at the time. But there is a lot of good information, and it does, not only do you have to have emotional intelligence in whatever leadership role that you're in, but you also have to take the emotion out of things, right?
Yes.
And I know you and I have talked about this a lot, right? And so it's whatever's happening, taking the person out of it and not drawing it on that person. And so that's one of the things that I've, over the last, I'd say 8 years, have really work towards too.
That's really great. I mean, my first influence, Brene Brown. Now I've read a lot of her books,
Yeah.
but I actually just recently did a speech about this, and I have another one coming up.
Yeah.
It took me until my adult life to reflect on this woman who was in my early career when I had my first summer job, and I had gone back there several years, and I was really annoyed by her. She was everywhere I was. She was there with feedback for me. And I was like, she's trying to fire me. You know, when you're 18 and you know everything. I was like, she hates me. She's trying to fire me. She's trying to force me to quit. And long story short, she was actually mentoring me. And I didn't recognize it because she didn't come out and say, I'm mentoring you now.
Yeah.
She just saw potential in me and was pushing me to see how I would react. And as a result of how I reacted, now looking back, I can be honest and tell you, I reacted the way I did out of spite. I was like, I'm going to be the best damn employee this place has ever seen. I'm going to do what she's asking, better, faster, more elaborate. I'm going to come up with new ideas because there's no way she's going to get rid of me.
Yeah.
And then I was asked to come back the next summer as a manager. And it was, I think if she knew how much I was cursing her name that summer, she would not have promoted me. But I'm so glad that she did, because looking back on that now and recognizing that you sometimes can't see mentorship until you're already standing in the results of it.
Yeah.
It definitely shaped me as a leader, but also I think more as an employee, where I moved out of that defensive nature when receiving feedback and into even the difficult piece of receiving feedback. Sometimes it's still like swallowing glass, but you take it. And then as I've matured even beyond just being able to receive feedback, I've now been able to discern which feedback I want to accept and which feedback I don't. If somebody's taking the time to give me feedback, I don't have to agree to all of it. I don't have to apply all of it, but I can pick and choose or even change the kind of feedback that I got. And that all started with this one woman who was the first female boss that I ever had. And she was one amongst a slew of men. And even though she was direct in her style and I felt like she was nagging me, she was really pushing me toward a potential that she saw that I couldn't see. And she gave me honest feedback at the end of that season and said, I was worried about you because in the beginning, I know exactly what she said to me. She said, if I can't give you feedback, what are we doing here? And I was like, what are we doing here? When you're 18, you just know everything. And she continued to give me feedback and push me and do it anyway. And then I had to, I wasn't doing it for the right reasons at the time, but I thank God for her, because she saw potential in me that I didn't see. And she saw a level that wasn't visible to me. And I keep that in mind now. There are always levels of potential that I may not see for me, or people that I work with may not see for themselves. And I try to keep my eye out for that and mentor people in that way too. So she was a huge influence for me there.
Are you connected to this person today?
I don't we're connected on like social media, but I don't keep in touch with her. I'm sure she's going to start hearing this story more, because
I'd be curious, to know if she's listened and what her thoughts are.
I'll have to reach out to her, because I've definitely given thanks to her, but I honestly didn't think about it until I was reflecting on situations over the last few years of people who've shaped me. And she's one of them. And I don't know that she ever knew it, because I didn't even know it until, just a few years ago, where I could really look back and appreciate her influence on me in my career. So
that's awesome.
Yeah, it was really cool. So jumping into that, I know you talked a little bit about a Brene Brown book. Are there any other books that you're reading now or at this stage in your life that have motivated you or changed you or driven you that you think would be valuable for our listeners?
There were a couple books by Rachel Hollis that I read. One was Girl, Wash Your Face. And this would have really tied into one of our previous episodes, Girl, Stop Apologizing.
Oh, Stop Apologizing, yes.
And so the books with her, it was really just being a woman and having ambition and not apologizing for that ambition, which actually is kind of funny, right? Because, she was always told she couldn't do these things. And it's just, her story is so interesting because she was an event planner, and she was an event planner for a lot of stars. And she was very successful and doing a lot. And then she wrote a book. And after that, she realized that she didn't want to do event planning anymore. She wanted to continue to positively influence women. And so then she started going out, and now, it's funny because I don't even know if she's still doing her thing, talking or whatever, but she was doing a lot of tours across the country for a while. And then her second book with Girl Stop Apologizing, she was coming out of a divorce or just going through a divorce. And so she knows what she wants in life, and it's don't apologize for those things, right? You need to do what you need to do, what's best for you. And I think at the time they were great. They were impactful, made me realize what I did and didn't want in my life. As far as career goes, I really think that the one book that stands out to me the most by a woman is Brene Brown, The Dare to Lead.
The Dare to Lead book. I think we talk a lot about mentorship here, and I know in both of our separate businesses, we talk a lot about communities of women and finding mentorship and opportunities that aren't available to women at such a high level as men.
Yeah.
And I do think that if you can get into reading books or audiobooks, even I need the audiobooks. If you can get into that, it creates a relationship with someone or an influence from someone that you can see yourself in if you don't have time to go to those networking events and build community. I know a lot of women are struggling managing their schedule. So I do encourage you to at least find a book that means something to you like these. And I think it was a great point that you made earlier where you read a book one point in your life and then you read it at another point in your life. And I think a lot of books can do that. For me, when I think about a moment in time where I really needed to read an author that stands out to me, a woman author also, is Jamie Kern Lima. She was the founder of It Cosmetics. And she has two books that I've read. One is called Believe It, and then the other one is called Worthy. And in Believe It, she just talked about her journey to being this multimillionaire and how she was down to the last pennies in her bank account. She was a waitress at Denny's, and people were challenging what she thought would sell her makeup and this formula she believed in. And she just was vulnerable and she trusted her own instincts. And then here she blew up, right?
Yeah.
And it happened at the last minute, right at the moment where you're about to quit, right at the moment where you're saying, I don't know what I can do next or where I can go. She started to succeed. And it took a lot of hard work. Her story talks about her faith. It talks about her effort, though, and also her trusting herself through it and not listening to even industry experts. Or what was very critical for me at that moment was a group of mean girls, you know, who were kind of putting her down, not really welcoming her into the circle. And she tells that story about how she just went and did her thing anyway. And I think at that point where I was deciding, I was stuck between two communities of women that I had experienced. One really, really encouraging and non-competitive and just girls.
Yeah.
And one that were in a really bad place of competition and really hurtful to other women for whatever reason. And reading a book like that with another woman who experienced both. She had people who really believed in her and were helping her. And then she had people who were putting her down and challenging her. And she just kept at it. It was right when I was deciding to launch Unapologetic Ambition. And so seeing myself in someone like that and the struggles that come with entrepreneurship and the struggles that come with being a woman in business, I think was huge. And she said something in that book, the thing that stands out to me the most was, God will hide your potential from people who are not meant to be the next chapter of your life. So it's not that you, and I'm not here to tell anybody what to believe, but it's not that you don't meet somebody's standards. It's not that you're not living up to their potential. It's that your potential was hidden from them. Because they're just not part of your journey anymore. And I thought that was really meaningful when you're at a chapter in your life where everything is changing. And you're making big, bold decisions to know, don't worry about the people who couldn't see it in you before. Because they're just not a part of your journey anymore, and worry about what's going forward because people have made it. And so I thought that was huge. And that point has been reinforced. Just when you're about to quit is the moment you're about to make it. So stick with it. And so I just absolutely love that book. I encourage anybody who's has a big idea. What's that?
I said I'm wearing It Cosmetics.
Oh, are you? So there you go. So yeah, that was just a great book. And I've listened to a lot of her speeches since then. She's just one of those people that really sticks with me as somebody that I can look to and say, you want to model proven behavior, right? So you want to see someone who's already done what you're trying to do and gone through what you're going through.
Yeah.
And then hopefully you can learn lessons from them to cut out time or hardship on yourself. And she definitely set that example for me a few years ago.
There's Mel Robbins has a very similar story too, because before she started taking off, she was like $800,000 in debt. And she was a keynote speaker for a webinar that I attended a couple months ago. And it was just very interesting. And she said on it, you don't have to buy the book, let them. I'm going to tell you all about it right now. And so she went through it and said, people are going to do what they want to do. So just let them. And if it's out of your control, it's out of your control. And that's fine. Let them make the mistakes. Let them do what they want to do. You do not have to be responsible for it. You don't have to do it.
That's true. I did buy the book and I did listen to it and I did re-listen to multiple parts of it because I have a very hard time letting them.
However, you have always been one in my career that has always said, it's okay, Rebecca. If they're going to fail, they're going to fail. Just let them fail. You used to say shit always rises to the top. So they're going to fail. Let them fail. Yes. Is what you would say. And okay.
It's very hard though. It's a constant lesson. And I think professionally, I will say it's been easier for me because I have built up the professional boundaries that I think you should have in a business where it's, I care for you and I care for your success and I care for the company's success, but I can also recognize that you have your own responsibilities here and I can't be responsible for you unless you're on my team. If you're on my team, I'm responsible for you. But I think to let them, when I am responsible for you professionally and especially personally, is very hard for me. Like when I think about kids, I'm like, I don't want them to learn hard lessons, even though I know it will shape them. And I know it's part of their journey and I believe in that. But as a mom, you just want to put a bubble around your kids all the time. And so letting them has been something I practice mentally all the time. Hopefully my kids don't see it because I hide it behind the scenes when I'm like, oh my God, I'm supporting you in this. Like hoping everything turns out okay. It's making me very nervous. And then also I think when you want more for someone and you see potential in someone and they aren't there yet, to just let them. And she talks about that. So I think to your point, if you're the kind of person that has a hard time with that, that is another really good book to read. There's a lot of scientific evidence and there are a lot of relevant examples to different stages of life. I think too. That was a really good one. I've recommended that to several people.
And that's one thing I just want to mention about the Brene Brown books is that she does a lot of research and a lot of the information that she speaks about is all evidence-based. It's everything that she's put into practice. She's tested on large groups and different organizations that she's worked with. And so it's just very interesting to see how things pan out. And again, I do think you need to have all parties invested in the outcomes to be able to have a continual practice, but also invest the time it takes to actually go through the process and adhere to it.
I'm actually reading a book by Brene Brown right now called The Gifts of Imperfection with a book club that I'm in. And I agree with you. She's really bold, but she talks a lot about her personal experiences, but she also backs it up with that science. She does a lot of work with shame and things like that. And I wasn't sure how I'd respond to that. But there was something in The Gifts of Imperfection that she talked about that was new for me. I'll share that with the audience. So this is why I think books are great, right? They have different impacts on different people at different times, and different people can inspire you in different ways at different times. And for me, sometimes I really connect with Brene Brown and sometimes I don't connect at all. But in this book, she talked about how it was brave to bite her tongue, where her friend was someone who said, oh, if somebody said that to me, I would have cried. And she was like, wait, you would have cried? And that would have been my reaction. Right. That would have made you cry? Like, F them. They're not going to make you cry. And it's very easy for me to put somebody in their place. It's not very easy for me to hold back and bite my tongue. And I've always seen that as a flaw, right? Is to be gentler. I told you I admire my mother and my sister. They've been great examples for me. But for her, she described it as the brave thing to do was the harder thing for her. And that was to pause, step back, not say the mean
Yeah.
thing back to the person who said something mean to her.
Well, it's funny because in Dare to Lead, she talks about empathy and what it is and what it isn't. And, you know, like she has this cartoon that it's very funny. I'll have to show it to you. But it talks about, oh, like someone talking about having a miscarriage. And they're like, oh, I'm so sorry that happened to you. And like but the better thing to do is be like, oh, I'm so sorry. And then hold the person and feel what they're feeling with them, right?
Mhm.
That's the empathetic thing to do, not to be like, oh, well, I'm sorry. The comment was, oh, I'm so sorry that happened to you, but at least you could get pregnant. Like those were the things that this cartoon does, right? But it's just very interesting because there are those people that are like, oh, but like, no, just be miserable with me, right? And so being empathetic with someone is being in the misery with them or being in the happiness with them, not in a judgy way.
Sure.
And that's what she compares and contrasts in this cartoon she has on her website.
I think too, I learned this very early on, actually in a class about accommodating persons living with disabilities in recreation, that you have to meet the person where they are in their disability. And it's very difficult to determine. You might have someone who was born with a disability. And so when you meet them, they're in a very different stage of acceptance and empowerment. And then you could meet somebody who's very early on with a disability who is still grieving.
Right.
And you have to meet that person where they are. And I think that's true in any situation where you need to be empathetic, right?
Absolutely.
Is to just listen and recognize where that person is and what they need from you in that moment and step out of your own discomfort, I think. Because I think some people want to save or some people are just genuinely optimistic and they're like, oh, but at least you can get pregnant. And you're like, that is not helpful in this moment. You know,
I'm going to punch you in the face right now.
And their intention was pure, their intention was good, but they lack the self-awareness to say that's not where this person is now, and I just need to hold them and be with them. And I think that's really powerful and a good reminder. And I think something we should do as women, which is not just pigeonhole ourselves into the people that we know are going to inspire us and the people that we're drawn to, but connect with people, read different books, attend different seminars of people who challenge our way of thinking and our way of living, because that's how you expand and become a better person, but also a better leader, you just increase your emotional intelligence, I think, when you do that, when you can sit through or read through something that really challenges your core beliefs and still find meaning or impact in it.
Step out of your comfort zone.
Maybe that's a to-do for our audience as you step into Women's History Month. Pursue looking into some women that you wouldn't traditionally pursue, women who do conflict with what you think or what you're typically motivated by, and just try to understand their style. I did that with someone not in a negative way. It was Dr. Shafali, and the book was A Radical Awakening.
Okay.
And I talk about personal accountability a lot.
Yeah.
And I think it's very hard to be accountable to just you when it's just you and your reflection in the mirror, and you have to look at yourself and be like, maybe I didn't handle that well. Or, wow, I could have been way kinder in that situation. Maybe I shouldn't have said what I said. Or even, hey, that situation I kept myself in, I knew I should have stepped out of that 6 months ago. And I'm talking professional.
Yeah.
And having to look yourself in the face and do that. And this book, A Radical Awakening, she focuses a lot on your ego and the things you do out of your own ego. And I think sometimes when people say ego, you get offended. You're like, I'm not egotistical. What do you mean?
Right.
No, it's very scientific. So it is a book that, like, I had to reread some chapters and really go back and listen in the audiobook. But she talks about the science of your brain, your ego, your compassion. And if you can listen to that, it's hard to, because it is holding a mirror up to you. But I think it challenged me in a different way to reflect on myself and say, okay, what could I be doing differently through this book? And what didn't I recognize was my ego, feeding my ego versus putting something powerful out into the world.
Interesting.
We just talked in our last episode too about taking on work that you don't have the capacity to take on, or your reasoning behind it. And some of that is feeding your ego, which is a hard pill to swallow when you're like, No, I just enjoy taking on more work, right? But why do you enjoy it? It feeds your ego sometimes. It makes you feel really good because you're like, look at how much I can do, and
you're
I
like,
can do it
look how
better.
pretty it is because I did it and I didn't let anybody else do it.
And then you look at, yeah, but I burn out because of that, and I was feeding my ego instead of feeding something that really would have helped me. So her book was really powerful for me as well.
That's awesome.
Because ego drives most of our stress and fear. And I'm a high stress person, so like
that's an understatement.
Realizing that it was my ego was a challenge. And so, are there things that you wish you knew earlier, or are there women you wish you found earlier, or steps you started to take to look for women you could aspire to be sooner that you would recommend now?
That's a great question. I think I worked retail for 15 years. And when I first started in retail at the kitchen store a million years ago, the women there, a lot of it was part-time. They were not people that I aspired to be. The woman who was the manager was an absolute bitch. Like,
oh my God.
No, like she was a terror. No one wanted to deal with her. Back then, no. But then when I came into recruiting, I feel like you were my mentor and you were the person that I wanted to aspire to be.
Don't make me feel bad.
But it's true because like I said before, you were my resource, right? So whether we were in the same organization or not, you were always my go-to if I had questions about anything.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I'm at a loss for words, which is not a good thing on a podcast, but that was really sweet. I'm really happy that I could be that for you. Like, it's an honor to be a part of people's journeys, and I never know how to receive that. I feel good about it, I guess, but I also feel like, wow, I'm trying not to talk about it from an egotistical point of view. Like, I feel honored to do that. And it's why I left corporate America to do what we're doing here on this podcast. And what I'm doing with Unapologetic Ambition was to give that to other women, because I feel like how powerful it is to have more powerful women out there and help them find their potential, and all the things I've been able to learn from the women in my life to give that to someone else and to serve people in that way, I think is what feeds me. You know?
And I think, unfortunately, because of the way that the system was built, when you look at most corporate larger organizations, there are a lot of catty, bitchy women that don't want to see you succeed, and it's unfortunate. So with this, hopefully we can make a change and start to have people be more supportive of one another.
Yeah.
Women specifically within the workplace, instead of trying to tear each other down and be roadblocks.
And I think actually that's a really good action step for Women's History Month. We talked about it in our episode about the scarcity mindset and women bringing women along, that I do think we can look at a woman and say, oh, they're just being bitchy and they're catty and they want to take me down. And I think anybody can relate to that. I'm certain we've all experienced it. I've experienced it multiple times in my career. But when you step back and you look at the why behind that, a lot of it is the scarcity mindset that society has constructed, that there's limited space for women at the top, that you have to scratch and claw each other to get to just that one position. And it's not true. We rise together. And so I think if you are experiencing that, maybe try to take it from a position of empathy and say, this is societal conditioning that's happened, and it doesn't excuse the behavior, but it explains it. And if you are the women who are holding other women down, maybe take a moment to really reflect and like I talked about, read the Dr. Shafali book, but really look at yourself and say, why am I doing that? What did this person do to me? Why do I feel compelled to spend my time and energy holding another woman back, putting her down, etc.? And I think it's easy to fall into that trap sometimes, right? This is real life. But when you find yourself in either of those moments, just step back and try to look at it from a different lens and move forward in a way that empowers women, especially next month. So this is why we're doing this the week before Women's History Month, so that you can be really intentional about what you do in March and how you pay homage to the historical sacrifices and accomplishments of women, and also how you can become a woman who has an impact on history and moving women forward.
And I just want to say impact on women in history. And so one of the things early on in my life that I learned about was Alice Paul, specifically because she was from Mount Laurel, where I'm from, New Jersey. And
she
so
was a Quaker.
And so I think it was on her birthday or something one year. My mom and I went and stood outside of her house with like signs and stuff. I have to go back and look at the picture because I don't really remember why. But then when the movie with Hilary Swank playing Alice Paul came out,
Iron-Jawed Angels.
Thank you.
I'm gonna put that in there.
It gave me a lot more insight. And I know I read books about her when I was younger because my mom constantly talked about her. But just as like, had she not done what she did and have the support of all the women that she had, we wouldn't, being able to vote was what she helped get accomplished.
Yes.
And so we wouldn't have that. I mean, we probably would, but it probably would have been a lot later.
Yes. So. Maybe. And there were some really interesting parallels too, because we are in Black History Month as well. And there was a moment where, you know, Alice Paul is advocating for all women to have the right to vote. And she has this interaction with a woman of color who says, it's my understanding you want us to walk at the back of the parade, and we're not going to do that. And Alice Paul has this moment of saying, well, other groups threaten to pull out. She's trying to push this initiative forward. And this woman of color says, I walk with my peers or I don't walk at all. She says, I understand. And then they show the scene where she steps over the line and walks with them. And I think that was such an important parallel too, because I think people can get sidetracked with this one goal.
Yep.
And then when you're trying to achieve that goal, you end up sacrificing the forward movement of other women. Yep. And I think it's really important for us as women to not allow that to happen and to recognize that women of different generations, women of different ethnicities, we all have similar experiences and we all have very different experiences. And if we can stick together and advocate for all and listen to all and not sacrifice one for the other, because then it's just not true. Yeah. And I think that that's a huge step forward. So the movie is called Iron-Jawed Angels.
Thank you. Yeah.
Just really funny. You know, people are in your life for a reason. There's another, I've known Rebecca for over 13 years now, and we're finding out something else we have in common because Alice Paul is one of my heroes as well. But that's a really good movie where they show that these women were imprisoned and held down and had raw eggs. They did a hunger strike and were force fed and kind of a form of torture, and in order to get us the right to vote. And so I think when you think about those kind of sacrifices, it reminds you to go out and vote, you know, because it's a right that did not come easily for women in America. And she's another cool hero to look at.
Absolutely. But also continue to support one another.
Yes, I think that's huge. Nobody does anything in this world alone. And I think for women, the more we can stick together, the more impactful we are, but the more feared we will be. And I think a little bit of fear of the power of women is healthy for society too.
Who runs the world?
Girls. So if we're talking to our audiences about how to start building their own learning network to empower themselves or other women, what do you recommend an easy way to get started? We've talked about some books, right? Podcasts, networking.
One of the things that I've done and always recommend is on LinkedIn, look for people who are where you aspire to be.
Yes.
So, okay, if you want to be a CHRO, look for someone who's a CHRO at a large organization. And when you connect with them, send them a personal note, or connect with them and then send them a personal note immediately after, because you can type more when you do that.
Right.
And just let them know that you want to connect with them because you aspire to be where they are one day. And that you never know what kind of opportunity that can open you up to. I've been lucky enough to have a mentor that I got from a class I was taking, and it was through another woman in the class introduced me to her. And I know that we'll be friends for life now. But it's so cool because I texted her last weekend. I was like, I'm taking a page out of your book, and I think I have like 5 or 6 jobs right now. And so because I don't think she sleeps. She runs on Diet Coke, and that's really it. I don't think she drinks coffee either.
Diet Coke is wonderful. So I don't blame her for that.
But you know, like continuing to build your network and finding a good starting place is finding someone on LinkedIn that you aspire to be. Reach out to them. They accept your connections, start a conversation, and just say that you're looking to build your network, but you also want to connect with people who are where you want to be in the future.
Yeah. I think something I'm taking from that, to just go beyond LinkedIn, I think women are sometimes shy to ask for mentorship, but I've seen a lot of women are hungry to give it, or at least hungry to connect you with someone who could.
Absolutely.
And I found that the more you just ask and engage in conversation with other women, the more those women give and give and give. I was just talking to a friend on Monday night who's like, oh, my wheels are turning. I could connect you with this group and that group. And this was just a genuine interaction and conversation about what we were both doing. But if you don't engage in that with intention, I think that's the big point, right? You have to be very intentional about your growth and your mentorship and your connection with other women. And what you'll find is more women want you to succeed than not.
Yep.
And you will find your community, your tribe, whatever you want to call it, if you just put yourself out there a little bit. And it might be LinkedIn, it might be engaging on comments on social media posts. There are a lot of women empowerment organizations and groups out there. At a networking event, I go out of my way to meet with other women and say, well, what do you do? Because you just never know. Where are you at? And, you know, what's going on here? And who knew our DISC assessments were so similar? You know, those are some of the conversations we've had. So I think you make a great point about being intentional and seeking out mentorship.
Yeah.
And then I think we've done, you know, a decent job of sharing some books that have influenced us. But if you can't get out there, if you just have a really busy schedule and maybe the only time you have some free time is 10 o'clock at night, then look up some female authors who are people that you would aspire to be or have gone through what you're going through, and read those books or listen to those podcasts. There are a number of ways that you can listen. And on the flip side of that, I want to encourage women to do more of what we're trying to accomplish here, which is reach out with intention and share your story and share your impact and share your network with other women to help them rise.
Yep.
And if more women would do that, it would start to bridge that connection a little bit faster, make it a little bit tighter, and you can really excel. So I hope that as you go into Women's History Month, you can respect all that women have done to get us where we are today and have the opportunities that we have and some of the really cool inventions that we have. Look up windshield wipers. There's an interesting story behind that. But also look for how you can influence the world in March too and become a part of that history. I think that's the biggest takeaway we wanted people to have today, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So with that, enjoy your Women's History Month. We'll be back next week for another episode of
No Filter, No Apologies.
Follow us on all your socials, NFNA Podcast. Until next time.